Hi, I'm Jim Barker. I work for Elation. I'm the host of the session. If I do my job right, I'm talking for 1% to 2% of the time, and Renee from Hilton is going to do most of the talking, okay? So, again, this is meant to be a session around real-world ideas. The way I want to sort of run it is I want to spend the first 30 minutes me sort of talking with Renee about some things around data governance. And then the last 15 minutes, I want to open it up to the audience for more Q&A. Okay, so as you're going through, you think about stuff, make note of it, and then hopefully you have a good set of questions at the end. If I get through my 8 questions plus some extra, we may get even a little bit more time. So hopefully that works for everyone. We're here to educate more than sell. In this session, I love to introduce Renee, who is a former customer of mine. And I had to have a Hilton slide in there. So there's Hilton and the Hallmark Channel for Christmas. So, okay, all right. A little bit on my bio. I've been in data for 30 plus years. About 21 of that was working for companies, and about 17 of it has been working in consultative types of roles. More importantly, Renee, you just want to maybe introduce yourself and talk about your background?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. Pleasure to be here. This is my second DGIQ. I did one in San Diego a couple years ago. Just really enjoyed the information I got from that. And you know what we really got out of that conference was the fact that there are different levels of understanding of where people are in data governance, right? You're just starting off, you're kind of doing it, but there's no adoption, or you're doing it, there's adoption, but there's still some things that are developing like AI type of applications. My background is, honestly, I started off with analytics. So I did analytics for Aflac, and in that, just to kind of keep it short, I developed a shadow IT function. And the reason I had to develop a shadow IT function is because I couldn't trust the data. And we were also not getting the data on in a timely manner. And so what we did at Aflac is we ended up creating that shadow IT function where we were bringing in our own data at the time that we wanted to bring it in, and started to really develop a good process for providing analytics to our sales partners. It was very successful to a point where we went from 1 analytics team to 12 analytics teams using that same sort of setup. When we were done, I felt that we had a very successful program. My leadership came to me and asked me, how did you make it successful? I said, well, I had to make sure that I brought in the right people with the right mindset to produce the right thing. So you're talking developers, engineers, and so on. But what was cool is that when we were done, my big answer to them around how can we make sure that this continues to go forward is to say, we need to make sure that our data is trusted. We need to make sure that what we bring in, we don't have to work 80% of our time trying to fix. I said, so in order to do that, there's 2 things. We have to move the functionality back to IT, right? Let them manage the entirety of the data. And then the second thing we needed to do is we needed to ensure that there was governance around that. And they said, well, we do have governance. It's just no one's adopting it. No one's leveraging the features. And I said, well, that's a big problem. So once they listened to my spiel on that, they asked me, well, put your money where your mouth is, right? And they said, why don't you lead our data governance program, bring it back up from the depths of where it was, and start to mature and see if we can't, start to get trusted data again. And so back in 2019, started working on the data governance program, did quite a few things there, and able to mature it to a point where when I left for Hilton, that was a self-sustainable data governance program, about as automated as we can get with a data governance program. And it wasn't just me, it was a team of individuals. They talk about bringing in the right people to support your business. That's what we ended up with at Aflac. Going to Hilton was sort of I was looking for the next challenge. I was looking for the next opportunity to help support data governance, to bring it up, to help others understand how important trusted data is. So essentially what I'm doing at Hilton now is I'm really helping drive the improvement of processes, the products, vendor relationships, understanding a lot of knowledge and training. And then we're at a point right now where a lot of those programs that I came in with the ideas on are now being sent out to the different groups, the different users, to then test them out to make sure that they understand what we're providing. So I know it's a lot of information, but it's been a great journey. I loved my time at Aflac and really enjoyed developing and maturing that program. So really bringing that over to the Hilton side and doing the same thing is it's been fun. And so we hope to continue that growth at Hilton.
Cool. All right. Renee did a good job of dabbling into most of the 8 questions I was going to ask here today. So we'll take some of what he just talked about and we'll drill into a little more detail as we go. All right. Okay. So first thing, I want to double back. You mentioned trust before. So to me, so from your perspective, how does trust fit into the program, and what are some things that you would give to be actionable here? You would give to the audience around how to push forward trusted data, et cetera?
Well, let me go back just a little bit on that question. In most companies, data governance falls under the IT umbrella. And I think that's a lot of where the problem starts, is you have your technology and you have your business. And there's a big disconnect between the two. And if data governance sits within the IT structure, everything is going to be technical. The conversations, when you talk about trusted data, what I found is that if you talk to developers and engineers, architects around trusted data, they're thinking to themselves, well, we're just bringing it from here and taking it there. We don't think about trusted data quality. And so one of the key things for me and the way I think about trusted data is let's go where it really matters at the business level. And so the best way to ensure that you understand how important trusted data is, you go to the business areas, you ask them certain questions around, what are some of your biggest pain points when it comes to your reports, when it comes to your questions, your analysis, and the business will tell you where their problems are. They will. If you ask them, I promise you, they want to know that somebody's there supporting them or cares about their problems. And once they know that you care about their problems and you start to show them the quality of their data, then they're like, okay, now what are you doing about it? And then you start to really develop that relationship with the business and then take that information back to the technology folks, and they finally start to work together where it's not, we're giving you what we want, right? Versus we're giving you what you want. So trusted data for me is such a big deal because that's where I came from, the analytics side. I didn't trust the data. I had to get individuals on my team to massage the data, to clean the data, to do all kinds of different things with the data so that we could develop trust all the way up to our CEO.
Cool. So in the last, in the keynote, they talked a little bit about fear and influencing where there's at. How has that played a role in what you've seen in your career?
When you talk about fear as in?
Well, I look at it a little bit differently than I think the way it was discussed earlier. So one of the biggest mistakes I see companies do is they've got this 70-page PowerPoint deck that says these are all the bad things about data. These are all the things that go wrong. We talked about this before, right? And at the end of that conversation where you've just educated them on how bad things are, you say, hey, do you want to help, right? And then they say, okay, scratching my head, I don't know why I can't get people to participate. Right. And I think on the fear side of things, it's fear of job stability. Am I going to lose my job in a period of time if this goes wrong? Fear of what's going to happen in the business if we make mistakes in these things, and fear to be sort of, the deer in the headlights, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Right? Good question.
So how does that sort of, when you've seen these types of people being fearful of wanting to get involved with data quality, wanting to get involved with the stewardship side of things, what have you seen and what have you done to overcome it?
So I've heard this very consistently, is that everyone's already doing data governance to some extent. They just don't know they're doing it or they're not formally doing it. And so when you start to get them to understand what data governance is and the stewardship that supports it, in their mind, they're going to say, I'm already doing a lot of these things, so what's different? Well, now we're formally doing it to where you're going to get credit for supporting the strength and the trust and efficiency of our data. Right? And then you start to show them some examples of how you have found specific situations where, okay, here's some errors we found. And had this gone out, this would have been the result of a decision that was made. Really, at the end of the day, people want you to show them examples of how improving data trust, data efficiency, and effectiveness. Once you show them some examples, they then start to say, I want to be part of that. And so we've developed not only that trust in that way to where they're not scared of supporting us, but we've also developed some programs around stewardship. Right? Stewardship is, hey, let's show you what's new, okay? Whether it's a data catalog, whether it's MDM, or anything else that supports data governance, we start to share some of that information with them at a certain level, at a high level. And then you find that people want more information. Those few, you take them aside, you do a little bit more training, but you're gonna see that when it comes to the fear that you're talking about, you have to remove that by showing them what they're already doing. That's the first thing. The second thing, show them the opportunities, meaning the examples of some of the things that have gone wrong, that could have gone worse, or were improved because you removed some of that trust issue or some of those errors that you found. So hopefully that helps answer that.
So maybe take a step back. I don't know I'm not going to do the poll question, how many people have done, where you're at maturity-wise in governance. So I think we all can improve, right, in the organizations that we're at. Ask you a simple question, okay? I'm rolling out a data governance program, let's say data governance including stewardship. How do what would you recommend to people that are at the early stages with their company? Where do you start?
I love this question. It's my favorite question because, like I said, the DEGIQ that I was at in San Diego, I met a lot of individuals who were a one-person data governance team, right? And they said, hey, I've been tasked with this. I come from a different background. No one comes in with data governance, right? They come in with some other background around technology or business, and they're asked to do this. What I would say is, the first thing is, what are you trying to solve for, right? What are you trying to solve for? What is the scope of what we're doing? Meaning, am I going to boil the ocean, or am I going to focus on specific data that is important to the business, whether it's marketing data, sales data, or customer data? You have to have a narrow scope. So again, what are you solving for, and what is the scope of the work you're doing? And I think that would work with any position I'd come into is what do you want me to do? Don't just hire me to do something just for the sake of saying, hey, we got a data governance program, right? That doesn't work. So again, what are you solving for, and what's the scope? And the second thing is leadership, right? Leadership support and accountability. That has to be up there. That's the second thing to me. If leadership is not supporting what you're doing, meaning holding others accountable to providing you that information or that support, stewardship that you need, very low level of success there. So you have to have that high level leadership support. And the third thing is stewardship program. You have to have individuals to put information into what you're collecting versus to be able to provide others with that information they can take out of. So data catalog, for example, how are you going to fill a data catalog without people supporting the information? We're taking the information of the data from here and we're putting it into technology, so that way it doesn't matter who comes and goes, who changes levels or jobs, that information is in there. And that's the third thing I would say. You have to have a good stewardship program. So hopefully that helps you guys out with the top three things I believe that I've learned through my travels in data governance.
So there we started on the front end, right? I didn't mention it in my intro. I wrote a doctoral dissertation in data governance, mostly written about 12 years ago. And one of the things that I pushed is this pillar diagram, House of Data, which I'm going to talk about this afternoon at 2:45 in this room. There's my promotional plug. And the other thing I really pushed was promotion, right? And this is to me less about data governance per se, but promoting your overall data program, right? So let's dig into that a little bit. So, why is data governance valuable to your organization?
We have a mission, we have a vision and all that, right? And it's all great when people write down these things of why it's important to us. But I think at the end of the day, if you're not speaking plain English, it makes it hard for someone to understand what you're trying to accomplish. And so for us, and I say for us, Hilton, but even for myself, the reason I want data governance is I want to make sure that people trust the data they're using to make everyday business decisions. And that is what we're committed to, whether it's our internal customers or our external customers. You have to build that trust. And the only way to do that is to have a formal program in there that supports, and not only supports, but shows how good the data is that individuals are using. If you don't show them what they're using, right? It's that whole thing. If I don't measure it, right, I can't show what they're doing or what they can trust. So data governance, I know at Hilton, I know it was at Aflac, it didn't start off as important. And like many of you guys, it's like, oh, we need data governance. There's regulations coming down, CCPA and GDPR, and so we just need this program. Again, it goes back to that first thing I gave you guys around, what are we solving for, right? Not just to support GDPR or CCPA. There's got to be something bigger than that internally that we're doing.
Okay, cool. What about, we talked about this before, the necessity of having a roadmap for your data governance program. Is that something you use? Do you see value in that?
Yes, that's another excellent question. It's that whole concept around trying to boil the ocean, right? Or the whole concept around NASA trying to secure space, right? It's too big, it's too much. So having a plan is absolutely critical. That would have been my fourth point, is you've got to have a plan. You can't just go out there and say, we're just going to deploy data governance as a whole. And how do you do that? Well, fortunately, we've got a good partner in Elation, but I've worked with a lot of vendors. And what's really important for me, being educated and getting more information, not just on what I've done in the past, but what I'm going to continue to do in the future, is to have good relationships with different vendors. And believe it or not, it doesn't have to be vendors that you deploy right now. Vendors are looking to build relationships so that hopefully down the road, we are able to work together, right? But more so, they're trying to educate the community, the data governance community. So part of my plan, part of making sure that I had a plan was, again, what are we trying to solve for? What's that scope? And then, do I understand what is important to the company, right? What is important to Hilton right now? What is driving their success, or what is hurting their success? And then when I talk about vendor relationships, they are there to provide you information. And I love it. I'll be honest with you, I take advantage of it. I steal as much as I can, because the more that I know, the more that my company knows, and the more successful we'll be. So certainly having a plan and going to these vendors to help you create that plan is a great idea. Do not be afraid of leveraging your business partners, your vendor partners, to help you build that plan.
Yeah, so a couple times you've seen some guilty smirks on Renee's face that we've been talking. So, having a vision, having a mission, and having a roadmap is what I keep pounding the desk on to help move that forward. So stuff that's there. But the other place was the idea of stealing stuff, right? What's the saying? Smart people come up with really good ideas. Really smart people steal everybody else's good ideas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Steve Jobs said that quite a few times about Bill Gates over the years. So and go from there. So how does data governance fit into your overall data strategy?
It's a huge pillar, right? It's a huge part of our data strategy. And this is interesting. When I came to Hilton, the first thing I asked my leader is, what is the overall company objective? What are the objectives or initiatives, right? And they said, well, why are you asking that? Well, our data strategy is built on those initiatives. And then on top of that, our data governance strategy is built on that data strategy. So as far as what role we play in data strategy, it's everything, because we intermingle and interlink with everyone: architecture, engineering, security, privacy, you name it. We want to mingle with everybody. And part of the data strategy, what it helps us do is it helps us focus, as I mentioned earlier about the scope. It helps us focus on what it is that we're trying to achieve, rather than saying, wow, that's a lot of initiatives. Can we support them all? No. What is important for us to govern right now? So that as far as being, what part of the data strategy that data governance plays, we're in everything, but we focus narrowly on the things that are important to the business to help drive our objectives and our initiatives.
Cool. So, I think you tapped into what my follow-up would have been, and that's around basically data strategy fitting into overall corporate strategy. Yeah. At DGIQ in the spring, I don't know if anybody was in Ladley's session, but he talked about his view that having a big data strategy that everybody signs off on, probably we put too much time and effort into it, and he'd rather see a line or two in the overall corporate strategy that talks about data to get more legs out of it and go from there. Yeah. So maybe a little more focus on the DQ side of things. So how does data quality fit, in your view, fit into basically your data governance activities?
What I've heard since I started working in data governance is data quality is a tool. And I don't think of data quality that way. Everything we do on the data governance side is data quality, right? We talk about trust. But going back to what's measured is what's trusted. Data quality can play a big role in the decisions that are being made, right? If you can measure something. If you are not measuring what you're doing, right? For example, if I'm finding errors in data consistently, and I don't show anyone that those errors are coming up, I'm just doing my job and running data quality application through our data, it's not gonna mean anything. And so for us, data quality, we have to understand that it's not just the application, it's not just the tool, it's everything we do in our process, in our overall data governance process. And you can actually measure data quality throughout that entirety of the process and then show where you started to where you are now, and then consistently show the improvement over time. And that's what people want to see. And I was just talking to an individual earlier around data quality, and people say, well, I can't get people to really care about data quality. Start showing them numbers or start showing their leadership numbers, and you're going to get some buy-in real quick, because no one wants to be last, and no one wants, be told that their baby is ugly, right? So if you tell me that my data is poor, I'm going to be offended by it, and I'm going to do everything I can to get my team on board to fixing the errors and the issues that are occurring. And again, that could go all the way to the curation of the data, the connections, right? We're only connecting to specific data, or we're duplicating data where instead of having one error, I've got 10 errors. So I know I've dealt with a lot of that through my travels in data governance, and I tell you, it's amazing what happens when you show people the quality of their data by numbers. So if anything you take from this specific data quality piece is you got to measure it. Just find a way to measure that data quality. And I think you'll start to get some people helping to support you.
By the way, my doctoral dissertation was data governance, the missing approach to improving data quality. Just saying. So, but cool. All right. So what is, I love this question. You may not like this question. What's the one thing you would do differently the next time that you roll out data governance at a company?
Yeah, and I apologize for repeating myself, but I hope in repeating myself, it's getting to your understanding. But it's, again, the issue that I had from the beginning in most cases is I didn't go in with understanding what I was solving for. And in every instance I came in, I said, okay, let me see everything, we can do everything. And that was a big mistake, because I knew that my eyes, right, were way too big for, my appetite was way too big for what I could do. And so if I would do something different, I would say the exact same thing I told you guys at the beginning. What do you want me to solve for? So I know that many of you guys have been assigned to data governance, and you're saying, okay, where do I start? What do I do? I'm telling you guys, you've got to ask the questions. Ask the questions, what am I solving for? What is my scope? What is the most important thing for us to solve for? Because in most cases, you're going to hear about risk, right? Risk reduction. You're going to hear about regulations and so on. But if that's the approach you take, that's the wrong carrot to take, right? You want to dangle that carrot, start to show, right? Based on what that scope is, start to show the issues, the errors, the information that actually is affecting the quality of our data. So if I were to do anything over again, certainly would be to narrow my scope and quit trying to boil the ocean. I'm sure you guys have heard that before.
Okay, warning the room, this is my last question, so I'm going to be coming to the room after this. So this was actually supposed to be one of my first questions, but I held off on it. So from a data governance perspective, you've hit on some of the same chords a few times here,
Yep.
right? But I want to go at it one more time. So what's one philosophical area that you see changing and growing in the near future? It can be AI related, it can be whatever, but what's the one big area you see changing in the coming 1 to 2 years?
You guys have seen or heard already a lot about AI and its ability to improve how we do data governance. My vision when I first started doing data governance at Aflac is I drew a picture on the whiteboard for my team, and I said, all right, guys, here's where we're currently at, and here's where I would like to be. Little did I know the role that machine learning and AI would take, would play in this journey that I had mentioned. And this is before me even knowing that they existed. I said, here's where we're at, here's where we want to get to. And where we wanted to get to was automated data governance. Automate as much as you can. And there are vendors out there right now that are working on AI capabilities that improve the curation of data, of the information for the data, right? So you're talking about metadata. That is number one, is if you can get with a partner who's developing an AI capability to help improve curation, your stewardship, adoption, and even trust is going to start to all of a sudden go up. Why? Because if they're scanning the data correctly, they're going to notice that there's a lot of similarities on the information that's already there, and bring it together to kind of almost like a MDM type situation. That's sort of the way I look at AI doing this, is they're mastering information, metadata, and bringing it in and applying into different things like a catalog or data dictionary. But AI, again, I'm sure it's going to be a dead horse by the time this conference is over, but certainly that is something I'm excited about, because that was my vision when I first started, is automated data governance, and that's going to help us get there.
Cool. All right. So this is like the data governance wheel that I use and we talk about, and that's something we've worked with Renee and team at Hilton on a lot. Mm-hmm. I'll talk about this a bit in the session that, again, is at 2:45 this afternoon in this room, and go from there. So now we're going to pause, and we're going to go and open the room for questions. So we got about 15, 20 minutes for Q&A for Renee. So who wants to ask the first question? Is someone back here? Let me grab the mic.
I'll start. Hey, Renee. So with data quality, you've talked about that during the presentation here. As far as data quality, what have you found successful methods for communication? Because what we run into sometimes is, for example, maybe you have 70% data quality. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that data quality is inaccurate. Your source entry could be 100% accurate as far as what's in the source and what's in your data lake or data warehouse or whatever. Mm-hmm. But in many cases, that data quality, the end user doesn't think the data quality is accurate, even though it may be 100% or close to a match of what's in your source system. So how do you effectively communicate that data quality and let end users know that, hey, this is good and drive user adoption, but really it's your source entry that is terrible?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I know I've struggled with that in the past, in showing people that what the numbers were given them are, it's accurate, because most of the time, to your point, they'll want to question it. And so I would say that the way that I've worked on that piece and communicating that has been to break down the types of data quality issues that we have found. If you just blanket say 70%, instead of actually showing them that this is, this is your format, this is, you got this many null values and so on. When you start to show them specifically what it is, take 5 or 6 different components and show them that breakout, and then they'll start to say, oh, we know why that is. We can fix that quickly with a change in the rule. Or we know why this is happening is because we're not enforcing, there's no mandatory fill in the fields. So they'll be able to answer some of those questions themselves and go, now I know, based on what you provided me in that breakout, that these are the things we have to focus on. And these we can change by rules, these we can change at the application level, and this we can change by the process. So it's that whole people, process, and technology. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Can you share with the room what you're doing around data quality dimensions? Is that something you guys are focusing in on when you build stuff out?
Yes, so we have an internal semi-automatic data quality process. It does leverage a tool, but it's not completely depending on the tool. And so what we're doing from a data quality perspective is we're going in and, again, what are the critical data elements? What is the important data that the business is keyed in on? And then what we'll do is we'll actually work with the business to try to identify, what we're showing, kind of your question, and how we can fix it. In most cases, and somebody said this to me earlier, it's like, we're showing people the quality of our data. We're showing people the state of our data. It's not up to us to fix it. It's up to the business to fix it. It's up to technology support to fix it. So just make sure that you don't get stressed out about, I have to fix data issues. That's not your role in data governance. Your role is to show them the numbers, show them the quality, and then let them say, oh, this is not that important. We don't care about that. That's why I keep going back to, what are you measuring? What are you trying to solve for? Because then at that point, if you take 70% and they're like, yeah, you know what? We don't really even care about the one that has the errors. And I had that. I mean, we have millions of records at Aflac that showed errors. And at the end, when we presented that to the business, they're like, yeah, we don't care about that specific data. So you have to know what data is important to the business.
Cool. Okay, cool. Next question.
Earlier, you gave us a 1, 2, 3 for implementing data governance, with 1 being knowing what you're solving for, 2 is obtaining senior leadership support, and 3 is having a stewardship organization.
Correct.
I'm curious on that third one, what does it take to implement an effective data stewardship organization?
Yeah. Without that leadership support, it's not going to happen, right? It's not my job. I already have too much on my plate. And remember what I said at the beginning, that we're already doing data governance. It's just not formal. So the best way that we found to do it is to start with the communication from leadership, saying we are implementing a data stewardship program. And the second thing that we asked leadership to do, besides the communication, was to actually reach out to their next level or directs and basically say, guys, I need you to assign owners to the data. Once you assign owners, we want those owners to assign stewards. And what we did in that process is we gave a list of roles and responsibilities so that way they wouldn't say, oh, I don't know what it all involves. I'm scared. We talked about fear earlier. No, we just want to simply start off small. And that's the same approach you want to take to the stewardship program. Don't tell them we've got all this we want you to do. Start off small. Help us define some of these things, or help us understand what domain it falls under. And then you'll start to see people going like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. I'd like to help. So I'm not sure if I answered that question, but certainly it's part of what I've used in the past.
I know from doing a lot of these events in the last couple of years, the toughest question I ever get asked is, how do you deal with a situation where somebody's the right person to be that steward, but their boss says, look, they're too busy, we can't really participate, right? Yeah. And my answer is, well, we need this somehow. If anything, then we can talk about a reorg and maybe bring that person to a central data team, and that tends to shorten up the debate a little bit, and then they become a little more team-oriented, I guess. So,
hey, Jim, and let me say this before the next question. One of the things that I was talking to one of our vendor partners earlier is around training. And we talked about how when you first come into a company, you take sexual harassment training, you take cybersecurity training, you do all that. Develop or help get someone to help you develop, or even go on YouTube and you'll find some short videos that can be used for mandatory training for everyone to at least know what data is, where it comes from, and who supports it, right? Keep it simple. I think there's like 3-minute videos out there that show you about, show users about data. And if you start with that, it removes some of the fear that we've been talking about. And so stewardship will help be supported by dropping that or reducing that fear.
and by the way, my favorite thing to do when I'm working with customers and how to build that training program out, I love to use Scott Taylor's Little Red Data Hen. If you don't know of it, use it. It's a nice little tool that's there. Yeah. So, Little Red Data Hen. How many people know who Scott Taylor is? I'm shocked. So you need to Google him. You need to look at 2 things. One's the Little Red Data Hen, and the second one is the Data Puppets. So, okay.
Jim, we had a question here first.
Hi, I'm an independent data governance consultant and subcontractor as well, and I'm frequently involved in pre-sales conversation, trying to sell data governance services. And I frequently am talking with a BICC manager or head of data analytics, and they struggle in selling it internally to leadership, to getting that leadership support. That's one thing. And secondly, if we manage then to do a data governance program, it's also difficult, to keep that support and keep that momentum.
Absolutely.
So question is, first of all, how do you get that support initially from leadership? And secondly, how you keep that support ongoing?
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you who it was, but in one of my situations before, I had someone, a leader, come to me and say, "Hey, we just got fined $6 million." Right? And why? Well, because we provided the regulators with data that they weren't asking for. And I said, did we provide them the data that they needed? Yes, we did. But instead of giving them the data they asked for, we gave them all the data, right? And that in itself was an issue. So we were fined $6 million. Unfortunately, those and the regulations are where everything starts. That's why I said, if you don't know what you're solving for, you need to ask. That is your carrot right there that you're going to dangle. So when I would go, if I was consulting with other individuals on how to get started, how to keep it going, is again, what are you solving for? What are some of the issues that you've seen? And if you're talking to an analytics individual or leader, find out what issues are coming from the business. Right? Because the business is what drives everything. The business is what pays for the work that we do. So therefore, if the business is not involved and there's not an understanding of how data governance can help support and improve data quality overall, then it's going to be hard to maintain that support. So again, it goes back to measuring, making sure that the business, because the business is screaming, guys, then the analytics teams are hearing it. If the analytics teams are hearing it, then they're going to drive it to the technology folks to make sure that it's supported. So I'm not sure if that helps, but those are the conversations I constantly have. But measure, measure, measure. Show them, show them, show them. If you show them and consistently maintain the measurements that you're doing and showing them how you're improving data quality or you've reduced issues, then they'll start to be a little more inclined to support you and to maintain that support throughout. But make it exciting, guys. There's a lot of things. I mean, the data catalog for us is one of those things that you got to keep excited. You got to keep, whether it's a theme that you're doing, go crazy, because like you said, it's hard to maintain that support. And unless you continuously improve how you're showing people things, pretty soon it's just going to be like a report that they get every week. The interest is going to go down. But showing the measurements has always been key.
Yeah, I always push for the idea of having an elevator pitch, 5 to 8 words of what you're trying to do with your data program. I tend not to try to win the battle that data governance is important anymore. I mean, if I get anybody to be convinced, they don't remember very long anyway, right? But if we've got that 5 to 8 quick words that are the glue that keep people going, that's helpful. And I always tell people, I know I said that to Renee when we did it, the higher you go up in an organization, the shorter their attention span. So 5 to 8 words. So,
yeah.
It's been just a few months since we rolled out a data governance program in our organization. So the question comes: is data governance a reactive process, right? How can we make it a proactive process and tie it to the product roadmap in terms of process improvements and things like that? Should there be a separation, or how do you manage the expectation
Yeah,
that
I
it is
love that
reactive?
question. Yeah, so it is reactive, unfortunately. That's why a lot of us have jobs, is because there was a need based on some error, some issue, something cost somebody money. It always goes back to money, right? If I cost my sales folks money because I gave them the wrong numbers, expectations, forecasts, and so on. So it is it starts off as reactive, but you have to be planning for that proactive approach. Is how are we going to solve for this, and then how are we going to make sure that not only do we maintain, but we improve things going forward. So yes, you start off reactive, and you want to have a plan for moving into a proactive state, and a lot of that is monitoring your data quality. It is monitoring how often people people are going into the catalogs and updating information. So if you have information, whether it's metadata or it's process information, and it's not being updated consistently, then yes, your program will all of a sudden start to die out. And we've seen a lot of data programs have to get revamped or restarted, kicked off again because others have failed. And a lot of it is because we are not turning from the reactive to the proactive. We're just doing reactive and we're like, okay, we solved for it, we're done. Can't be that. It's a program and it's ongoing.
Thanks, Renee. Cool.
We have one right here. Jim. She's been.
Thank you. So I wanted to know if data quality is an attribute in your metadata, if data quality is attribute to your metadata, and then does your data product have like a weighted quality so you understand the quality of your data products, right?
Yes.
But then there's a calculation between like how much correlation when you're doing regression analysis, right, as a data scientist,
Right.
like how powerful your data product is measuring up to your analytics outcome. So it's a bit technical, I know, but it just got me thinking.
Yeah, so when we make our connections to the different data sources, the first thing we do is we measure that data quality. That's the first thing we do is as we bring it in, then we connect it to our data quality program, and then it starts to give us, at least for the Alation catalog that we currently use, it does provide a data health tab where it tells you the quality of that data. So yes, absolutely, because every time we are asked questions around where to find data and how good this data is, we lead them right to the catalog and said, go here, and this is where you'll get all your information. So what we end up doing is we ended up showing both the actual data health tab as well as the information around there. But there's also, in the Alation data catalog, there's a deprecation flag. Right, there's trust flags in there as well. And so as users start to leverage that information, that data, they can go in there and say, hey, I've used this data, it's good quality. And they have someone to contact. As far as percentages of what is, what someone will use, data scientists, for example, really at the end of the day, everything's about risk taking. You can use data that is 90% trustworthy, or you can use data that's 70. It's completely up to you and the risk that you're willing to take. But if I were to answer your question really quickly, yeah, absolutely. We measure it, we bring it in, and we do apply it to metadata. So the metadata really helps us identify the data, where it sits, where it's coming from, lineage, for example, and then we know what transformations have taken place for us to be able to say, yes, we can trust it, we apply a trust flag, and boom, it gets used. So I'm not sure if that answered. Absolutely, and we use data products at Hilton as well, and we love doing that because there's a lot of duplicate data when you're breaking out to data products, and it all goes back to the main data source, which is where we bring in the metadata and we start to apply data health.
And I would add on top of that, the whole idea of analytics on top of analytics. To build better analytics is a great thing to do. And I think it's an area where we're in our infancy as an industry, and there's going to be more of that. So being able to go into Alation Analytics and see what stuff's being used in the catalog, at the same time being able to go through and see what the use of, what the popularity is in different objects, and then joining that to that trust data that you talked about before, that's the secret sauce, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because Alation does have Alation Analytics, which is your data about your data about your data, right? And what's cool about that tool is it's a database, right? It keeps all that information. You can pull it out however you want, whether it's SQL, MicroStrategy, or whatever, but you can pull that out and it provides you a lot of information around the state of your data, the users of your data. When you're talking about what data is important to the business, go into Alation Analytics, it pings the data source, it pulls out the logs, and it tells you what's being used the most. What's being used the most. Now try showing that to the people, to the users who are using it, and go, this is the state of the data that's used the most. It's eye-opening when you have that capability, that feature.
Cool. Let's try to get 2 more questions in.
I too started off as an analytics person and raised my hand and said, I don't think this data is right. They said, good, you get to fix it. So in my experience, our IT colleagues felt they were doing data governance, but I found so many errors that it truly wasn't happening. So I've spent the last 2 years trying to really get them on board, and I've built some trust. Did you have the same type of issue where the technical piece that you have to do that might not be under your control, you had to exercise influence, and how did you do that?
I love that question because yes, both times that I've done it, I have had the pushback and the not understanding what we're talking about. So I'll go back to involve the business, engage the business, because if they're screaming at the quality of their data or how it's not being governed, then the folks on the technical side have no choice but to start to support, because that's their customer as well. So that's a lot of what I've had to do is I've had to go around my technical peers to find out what the real issues are that exist in our data, and then get them on board.
Hence your shadow IT. So one last question. I know we're at time, but anybody else one more?
I think
He's closer.
Before you were talking about like reactionary versus proactive approaches to data governance, have you done anything to try to be more proactive as far as, like, there's lots of applications like WalkMe, for example, where you're controlling more of the point of entry so that, like, yeah, I mean, you have to monitor, you have to have kind of like policing involved so you can see what people are doing, but that's still all very reactionary. So do you have any experience with the kind of like controlling what people are putting in so that there is less like cleanup work? Does that make sense?
Yes. So what we started doing at Hilton is we started looking at the different connections that we have with our data sources. And what we found is that there were a lot of duplicate data sources, even through migrations that we were working on. And so what we started doing proactively is we started looking at those connections, seeing what data already existed in other data sources, and then we started to use what Elation has as called a catalog set, right? What it allowed us to do is allowed us to group information that was identical from different data sources and basically bucket it and say, okay, this is all the same information. And because of that, that's our proactive way of saying, oh, we've got some new data coming in. Where did that come from? Does it belong here? So we've done that. We started doing that earlier this year, and it's been awesome for us being able to identify the different types of PII classifications and so on that are coming in. So I love talking about classification and PII, but obviously we don't have time for that. But hopefully that helps answer your question there.
Yeah, the other thing I would add is data quality firewalls are a thing of the past that I think are going to come back, where you've got a data quality check as data's entering in the first place, and then it's all about getting data right at the source, as opposed to having to do everything in data pipelines and do it multiple times. So it can be helpful. Thanks, everybody, for the session. Hopefully this was useful. Again, 2:45 this afternoon. Also, we'll have a booth open at ice cream time, which is at 3:15 this afternoon. But thanks for joining us.
And if you guys have any questions, I'm going to be at the conference all week. If you see me, you got any question, I'll be more than happy to speak to you and to give you some insights. Because I'm not just here to help others. I also want help too, because there's different ways to accomplish different things. So, thank you.